What mistake should have killed you? Climbed onto one of those underpasses that allow river water to flow through when I was like 5. Got swept in the current and taken down the river. Only reason I survived is my dad saw my long hair barely under the current and jumped in to save me. Playing with the laundry chute in my childhood home when I was around 5 years old. My cousins and I took turns dropping things down the chute while someone else stood at the bottom and dodged them. For the most part it was things like washcloths, stuffed animals, a clothing item, etc. Just so happened that when I stood under the chute, my cousin dropped a 5-pound dumbbell down and I, expecting something harmless, didn't get out of the way. That ended the game real quick. I now part my hair in a way that hides the bald spot scar on my head. Edit. Listen. It shoots the laundry down. Also, a weight was dropped on my head. Shoot. 3 years old. Love M&Ms. Find blue ones behind stove. Yum. Rat poison. Carrying a toilet by myself after having painted the bathroom. Got caught up in the drop cloth and fell on the toilet smashing it and a piece of the porcelain cut into my knee. My father was there with me and immediately took me to the hospital as the bleeding was pretty decent. The doctor told me that the piece missed an artery by 1/4 inches and that if I had been a smaller man I'd have bled out before I made it to the hospital. Being a very large man, 6 feet 2 inches and 350 pounds at the time, saved my life. Been there done that. I worked as a plumber for 10 years. My boss used to just pile the used toilets up out back until there were enough to make a truckload for the landfill. Me and my coworker were throwing it off the back of the truck onto the pile. We decided to throw on 3. He let go on 2, and it hit the side of the truck and shattered. I was wearing leather gloves, but it sliced right through 3 fingers anyway. My grandpa told me to put some diesel fuel on it. It healed nicely, and there's only a slight scar still visible. Many years ago I owned a pub. I went upstairs to the house area to find all the lights were off. I flicked the trip switches to turn the lights back on, which they did. I then heard running water from my co-owner's fish tank in the lounge. Turns out the protein skimmer had flipped over and was spilling water over the wall socket. Instinctively, and very stupidly, went to turn off the plug, and as soon as I touched it got sent flying over the back of the sofa. Don't know how I'm still alive to this day. I nearly fell into a fucking volcano leaning on a rope fence. Edit. Holy shit, this comment blew up. Right, more context. I was 8 to 9 at the time, and I managed to catch myself on that same fence. After I nearly keeled over it, I never let go of stuff when I fall. This was in Italy, hence the lack of actual safety procedures. This was 13 years ago. I was skateboarding with some buddies at a busy shopping center. A few minutes before leaving, we were waiting at a crosswalk to cross the street. One of my friends takes off running across the crosswalk, and my other buddies follow suit. So I took off as well. I was not even paying attention to the light, but the lane crossing the crosswalk was on a green light. My 2 friends in front were in the clear, but myself and one of my other friends were both hit by a U-Haul truck. Yes, really. Trust me, I got shit for years about getting hit by a huge, bright orange truck, going probably 40-45 miles per hour. My friend in front of me didn't get hit too bad. I got hit square in the chest. I had no clue at the time what even had happened. I was running, then I was on the ground in a daze, no pain, and I even got up and instinctually ran back to the sidewalk that I had come from. No clue I'd been hit by a truck. I was more just like, what in the FCK just happened? A nurse that was at the light came and helped me, told me what had happened and helped me stay calm. She asked if I was having trouble breathing. I was, but it was attributed to me having asthma. Later found out it was because both of my lungs were punctured. Anyways, the ambulance shows up. I'm holding up very well, no clue why. Kinda just thinking, okay damn, I must have gotten super lucky. I'm conscious, talking fine, no biggie. They only had 1 bed in the ambulance, so my buddy was lying on it, and I was sitting hunched over on the bench for the ride. I wish I was joking. We get to the hospital, and I try to pull myself up to get out of the ambulance, and I can't. My shoulders hurt way too bad. The EMS guys tell me I probably dislocated my shoulder, and that I'll just have to get it popped in, and before I know it, I'll be back home. Once inside, we get put in the waiting room. No, I'm not joking. We had skateboards with us, and the desk people had no clue. They assumed we just fell on our skateboards or something. So I'm still feeling pretty good, other than some sore shoulders, just chilling there watching Wheel of Fortune. When all of a sudden I start feeling super clammy and disoriented. I remember hearing my mom screaming he's going into shock, and then next thing I know I'm being wheeled down a bunch of the hallways. It was like in shows where it's a blur of those fluorescent lights just flashing overhead one at a time. I start having severe pain. Like the worst pain you could imagine. But I can't be given an painkillers yet, because I have to go through a bunch of tests first. I'd assume these tests should have been done right when I got there, but what do I know? The one I really remember is having to be picked up off of the bed and put onto one of the machines that required I be on my back. They had people grab each corner of the sheet from the bed that I was on to move me onto it. I remember it kind of squishing my shoulders inward a bit, and holy shit, that was the worst pain I've ever felt. Anyways, after a ton of tests, it's found out that both of my lungs are punctured, both of my collarbones are snapped in half, broken ribs, cracked sternum, concussion, the works. Ended up spending the next couple weeks in ICU. They didn't have any hospital beds open for me at the time, so I actually ended up being transferred to a children's hospital. It was fucking sweet. People came and sang to me, and brought me teddy bears and shit, and I was just jacked up on morphine watching Lord of Rings all the time. But yeah, it was a pretty tough recovery, and I went from just hanging out with a smile on my face to a scary place real quick. I went to a world-renowned clavicle specialist at Duke Medical for my collarbones. He normally had an insanely long wait list, but apparently when he found out that I broke both at the same time, he was willing to see me as soon as possible. He told me that he'd only ever had a few patients that broke both at the same time, because the force required to do so almost always resulted in death. But eventually I got better. Full recovery. Was a bit of a hypochondriac for a while, and was scared to cross the street for a while. But other than that, no biggie. TLDR, I'm a dumbus, and didn't luck both ways. The hospital is a dumbus too. I fell down my friend's basement stairs when I was 8, hit my head on the concrete floor, and ended up being airlifted to a major city hospital after being knocked out and still screaming. Ended waking up a couple days later and found out I was missing a tooth, and I was told that as they were putting a breathing tube in, it knocked my tooth down my throat, which scared the docs more. But I was super happy cause I paid Malay for the first time in the game room and ate jello for meals. Turns out that I was actually in a comatose state and gradually got worse over 48 hours until I had zero brain activity for about 6 minutes. So I guess I did die, but I didn't find out from my family till afterwards, because who tells an 8 years old that they died? Not wearing a helmet while on a bicycle and stupidly turning left just as a car overtook me. Somehow I only got a neat scar through my eyebrow and some torn up kneecaps from it. But the look on my mother's face when she picked me up from the hospital, that made me realize how profoundly stupid I was that day. Edit. I did make a turn signal with my arm, but the driver apparently didn't see it. He later went over to the hospital to ask if I was okay and to apologize for hitting me. Pissing off a cliff, wasted on Jack Daniels. My girlfriend at the time pulled me back by my sweatshirt, or that won't be it. Tubing behind a speedboat, pulled myself too far forward. It submarined and popped up in the air. I was flung forward and got tangled in the tow rope. I remember organizing my room when I was 10 or so. I had a lava lamp on the verge of falling off my cabinet. I didn't notice until I heard a loud chatter on my floor. For some reason my brain thought it would be a good idea to pick up all the shards. I jabbed my foot with a huge piece of glass and passed out from the pain. Woke up in a hospital bed thinking it, and realized the shard was gone from my foot, was stitched back up, and getting relieved looks from my family. Turns out when I passed out, I hit my head on the cement floor. I was living in my parents' basement and cracked my skull partially open and was bleeding profusely. I got taken to the hospital. My family thought I was dead. Edit. Concrete floor, not cement. Thanks for pointing out. Retentioning a garage door spring and the tension tool popped out. The door crashed with enough force to crack the pavement. Edit. Had no idea so many others had died doing this. Going forward would never do this again. When I was around 13, my mom bought this old house and asked me to clean out the garage. We didn't have a key, so I climbed in through the window and tried to open the garage door. It was an old one you manually opened. I crouched down and start pulling this thing up, and the top half came off the rails and swung down, hitting me right in the head. Woke up, who knows how long after, with a cut on my head and blood all over. Only time I've ever been knocked out cold. Turns out mom knew it was broken and forgot to tell me. Damn it, mom. As teenagers we used to smoke pot in the garage in the car with it running for hours. No idea how we didn't kill everyone in the house multiple times over. My dad got trashed and tried to jump over the fence at Yankee Stadium with his friends. He failed and an iron spike punctured him. He remembers being rushed to the hospital and bleeding everywhere. Everyone thought he was going to die of blood loss. Didn't die, but he also made several more stupid mistakes, such as riding a motorcycle without a helmet and breaking several ribs etc etc. Honestly, he is still stupid, and I'm surprised he hasn't died yet. Edit. With to without. I stumbled through a bush which had a 1 meter drop after it where I fell down. I landed on my back at the only place down there which didn't have a iron pole sticking out of the ground. Driving over an IED in Iraq, that battery had gone bad in the heat. If the battery was live I wouldn't be. Edit. A lot of people are wondering how I knew that it was there when it didn't go off. So here is the answer to that. I was in a rural area. I didn't see some disturbed dirt in the dirt road that we were driving on, but my lieutenant in the passenger seat almost shit his pants because his life flashed before his eyes. He literally curled into a ball in his seat. I asked him what was up, and he said he was sure that there was something back there. We were currently escorting troop carriers to drop off a foot patrol in the middle of nowhere, so after we completed our drop off we went back on his order to check out the spot. My truck was the only one with an RF jammer, so I took the lead up to the spot my lieutenant had seen. When I say it, I thought to myself, holy FCK, how did I not see that? I was the demo guy, since we didn't have enough EOD in the area, so I went up to it, saw the pressure plate and wires, dug it up, and there was a battery with the battery acid all leaked out. They didn't bury it deep enough, and it was the middle of summer. About 130 F out. Not good for the battery. Under the battery and pressure plate was a box about the size of a Foot Locker filled with explosives and accelerant. If it had gone off, my whole truck would have been dust. We had to do a controlled demo since COD was busy, and after we took it out, half the road had a 5-foot deep crater in it. Also, thanks for the gold, stranger. Passed out in the woods after running from the cops. I was at a party in college and decided I was done, so I started walking home. Got like half a mile from campus when a cop pulled over to talk to me. It was like 3 AM and my drunk ass can't walk in a straight line on the sidewalk. My instant drunk reaction to seeing the blue lights was to bolt into the woods at full speed. Naturally, I can't see what obstacles are in my way, so at some point I had tried to either climb a fence or run through thorn bushes. Eventually I ran headfirst into a tree and fell down. I had probably the most absurd thought I've ever had. If I hold my breath, the cops can't see where I am. So I did that and passed out while lying on my back in the woods. I woke up a few hours later as the sun was coming up and realized I had shredded my clothes and my face/arms looked like I had been attacked by an animal with all the scratches. The worst one being a vertical cut that went lengthwise down the interior of my forearm, starting at my wrist. This was 12 years ago, and I can still see the scar from that particular cut. The rest have healed and faded, but that one is still prominent. Had that been a little deeper, I have no doubt I would have bled out while lying on the ground in the woods, if I didn't already die from alcohol poisoning. There were probably 3 or 4 things that should have killed me that night but didn't. When I was in high school, me and a few friends all lied to our parents and told them we were spending the night at each other's houses. What we had really done was backpacked up a snowy Idaho mountain in the middle of winter without telling anyone where we were going. We were all fairly inexperienced in winter backpacking. The friend in charge of bringing food brought chicken he'd cooked at home, so we could eat it cold in case we couldn't start a fire. Luckily I'd brought a can of chili and didn't partake in the chicken. I woke up the following morning to a fresh foot of snow and my friends vomiting out of the tent. We'd left our boots outside and they were completely frozen through. The shoelaces of my boot were pointing up and out and had zero bend. Me and one other friend, we are not sick and had to pack up the tent. The most freezing cold work I've ever done. I gave one of my sick friends my gloves because he couldn't find his. We were about 3 miles into the hike and the trail we'd taken in was totally covered and none of us were familiar with it enough to know it by memory. I took all but one pack and ran down trail to the car, making my best guess on which way to turn and marking those choices with ski poles. Got to the car, started it up to get it warm and to check if we had cell reception. We didn't. And then I ran back up trail to where they were and we carried them back to the car. I got home and felt like total garbage. My entire body was on fire from the cold and the soreness. I felt freezing to my bones, and when I got home I started puking and was pastel white and sickly looking. My dad was pissed at me because I was hungover and I opted for that punishment rather than the insane fury it would have caused if he knew why I was actually in my condition. Car crash at 80 km/h. I hit a car that was going through a red light perpendicular to my direction of travel, came to a dead stop after hitting the back quarter panel/wheel of their car whilst they barrel rolled 3 times into the nature strip. I hit the windscreen with my head because I'm 6'5" and wasn't wearing a seatbelt because I thought I was top shit. Both myself and the other driver walked away unscathed, which was the most surprising of all. I was taken to the hospital because of my collision with the windscreen, but was released shortly after some scans that came back okay. I don't know what saved me or the other driver that day, but I thought I died for several seconds after the impact and airbags went off, only to realize I was a bit dazed but generally fine, which followed with moments of disbelief and joy. Driving from Italy to France. I was going to meet up with my husband and should have just flown, but I wanted to bring our dog and I wanted to avoid renting a car. When we got there, it was supposed to be a 12-hour drive, but once I got to Rome I realized I forgot my passport at home. I had to turn around and double back, putting me behind by 2 hours. Because of my backtracking I wasn't on the Morandi Bridge when it collapsed that day. I had a very bad rebellious phase. At one point, I ran away from home for a week and hitchhiked my way across my country along with one of my friends. For context, we were both 15 to 16 at the time. One of the cars that gave us a ride happened to be 2 suspicious looking foreigners, older men, who spoke between themselves in Turkish and only one of them was able to address us in our native tongue. But we were too dumb to realize the red flags. It finally occurred to us when they passed up our exit and refused to let us go when we indicated their mistake. I had to basically fake it, as if my father knew where I was and that he'd be expecting me at a certain spot at a certain time, not even knowing if that would work. It did, miraculously, and they let us go in the middle of nowhere. We had to basically hitch another ride home. Boy, was I stupid. Riding my motorcycle like a jackass on back roads. Thought buddy gave the signal we were going to pass a car on a double yellow. I proceeded to throw the bike into the next lane without thinking it through. Was greeted by a work truck with a utility bed on it, wider than normal truck bed. Was already ahead of my buddy and almost next to the minivan that I thought we were going around. Decided my only option was to pin it, think skinny, and split right down the middle of the double yellow. I should be a grease stain. Had to pull over and think for a while after that one. Don't really ride on the streets much anymore because of this incident. I found the racetrack and I'm much happier taking my hooliganism to a closed course these days.